built from scratch. On this show, I interview entrepreneurs under 30 to hear about the stories of their initial success. My goal is to encourage the next generation of leaders to take action and make a difference. I'm Eric Libby. On today's episode, we have entrepreneur Shubs Kaushal with Sharpstakes. Originally from Canada, Shubs graduated from the Ivey Business School and began his career in mergers and acquisitions and innovation banking. He was also part of the founding team of a Combinator-backed startup. Now Shubs is a co-founder of Sharpstakes, a seven-figure business that provides sports betting recommendations. Since launching, he has attracted over tens of thousands of users nationwide, has been recognized by SCCG's Management's prestigious 20 in their 20s list, and even secured a second-place finish at the Ivey Business Plan Competition, earning a $7,500 prize. Shubs is only 22. Shubs, welcome to the show.
Appreciate it. I'm excited to be here. You need to be nominated for Wingman of the Year.
There we go, right? Hyping you up to start.
Yeah, right. I love that. No, it's a pleasure to be here. Super excited to talk and chat
and have some fun.
Yeah.
So where we like to start always, Shubs, because I think it's important to highlight, like, you've had some success obviously to this point, but going back to the beginning. So you're from Ontario. I'd love to know what was growing up in Ontario like.
Growing up in Ontario's nice. I'm from a little city called Mississauga. It's on the outskirts of Toronto. And it's a nice place. I think it's very unique in the sense where it's very multicultural. There's a lot of interesting things going on here in terms of the fact that there's so many different types of people. I think you're exposed to a lot of things growing up. And it's just a general nice place to live. I want to say one of the best places to live in the world. I'm very privileged from that standpoint. You have good schools, you have clubs, you have a lot of interesting things happening. So I can't complain. I'm always going to be a Canadian boy. I'm always going to be a Mississauga guy. So yeah. It has a special place in my heart.
Incredible. So when you were growing up, could you see initial signs of like entrepreneurial endeavors, like even small things? What were you doing when you were a kid?
Yeah, no, it's interesting you asked that. I was cleaning my room the other day and I was reading through some like old birthday cards that I had them, right? And my sister gave me a birthday card from when I was 14. And the note she wrote, I didn't even like remember this until yesterday. It was like, hey, you're a pain in the ass, but you keep questioning why, and I respect that about you. And I didn't even realize that, right? So that's the first thing that came to my head. I think the one thing that I realize in retrospect, it's always easy to connect the dots in retrospect, never going forward, is that I think yes, in the sense where I always question things. I think I was always a person growing up where I saw anything and everything, I always asked why, like literally everything. And I think for entrepreneurship, that's important. I think in regular life, it's quite annoying, like my sister pointed out. But I think that's something that I always did, is I was always curious about why things are built the way they are. How can they be different? I never liked just being stagnant. And I think those are the things that I can probably recall looking back, at least.
Was there any like initial, like when you were asking those questions, did you see any initial ventures that you did, like even small, like lemonade stands or little innovations?
Yeah, I think so. I think, yes. I think I was always hustling. Like I was always trying to make deals growing up. I remember, again, going back to my family, I remember when I was like 12 or 13, my mom wouldn't let me go out ever. And so I literally recall writing up a contract when I was young and being
beautiful. Yeah.
We have a deal. Like, I'm going to do these chores. You're going to let me stay out until 8 p.m. So I was like making deals. I was like hustling. I was like doing little partnerships like that. And yeah, I remember selling shoes. Like, I think reselling is such a integral part of everyone's life at this day and age. Like I don't know, did you ever wear like hype sneakers or like a little hype beast shirt? If you did it, you know someone who did.
Yeah. And actually, funny enough, there's been multiple of these founders that I've interviewed that have said their initial entrepreneurship was buying, reselling sneakers. I think 3 or 4 of them have said that same thing.
Same. I think it's like a checklist moment.
Right on.
So that was definitely one I remember early on, selling sneakers. I used to do people's homework for money. I don't know if that's like a cliche. I used to do people's homework for money all the time. So like I would go to people who were a couple years older than me, and I'd be like, I'll do your math homework. Like, give me $20 this week. And so like I was always just trying to do things.
You were thinking. You were scheming at the beginning.
I was thinking. I was studying. But yeah, I would say so.
With the people in your life, because we are influenced a lot by the people in our close proximity, did you have family members, parents, uncles, aunts, neighbors that were in the entrepreneurial space that kind of like shifted your mind, like, I can do something to make money doing it?
Yeah, I think so. I have an uncle. I have a lot of love for him. He's a dentist, but he always had his own practices and he was always innovative. He always had the nice cars. And I liked the money aside and everything aside, I just liked how he lived his life. I felt that he was more free, relatively and holistically speaking, not even from like an hour standpoint, but just from like a mentality standpoint. I think he was always busier than everyone else. I don't mean free in terms of like he worked less or anything like that. And it made it seem that he had kind of everything in his own hands. Whereas sometimes I felt people around me were always stressed about their job and what's going to happen next, etc. So I think from a young age, it's something that stood out to me where it's like his life wasn't easier per se, but everything was in his own hands. And I think I respected that a lot.
Do you remember what age you were, like when that clicked and that light bulb went off?
I don't know. I think I was probably like 12 or 13.
Okay. But you saw it, like you recognized and you remember that.
Yeah, yeah, I literally remember him being like, again, like everything that was in his life was in his own hands, good or bad, right? So again, I don't know if it was necessarily easier or less stressful. I don't think it was in retrospect, but he had control. And I think that's something that all entrepreneurs like in the back of their head is just kind of being at your own steering wheel. So that's something I can always respect about entrepreneurship and him specifically.
So we fast forward a little into the story and we go to 2020 and you decide to attend Western University and then follow that by Ivey Business School.
Yeah.
And I mean, you have multiple ventures that come after this, but at the time, were you working on any venture when you first went into school?
Yeah, 100%. Western's a great place. Shout out Western, shout out Ivey. Maybe one of the best schools in the entire world as well.
Interesting.
Personal bias. I don't know if
that's extreme bias. Yeah. Continue.
all bias. I don't know if that's on any list or anyone said that, but in my opinion, maybe top 3 schools undisputed. Cool. I think when I was at school again, I always liked to hustle. Like for me, entrepreneurship is like a game, right? Like I'm not an athlete. I wish I was sometimes. But entrepreneurship is like a game, right? And it's like a way to play a game. So I always liked competing. I always liked doing things and building things. So I remember doing a lot of case comps when I was in school. I remember I was working a full-time banking internship while I was in school because it was COVID, right? So like you could be camera off and like I would be in class on one computer and like be doing like a full-time banking internship on another computer. And so I did that. And then eventually I joined a startup while at school, and that was Matterverse. So I was working on some stuff while being a student. Yeah.
Before we get to Matterverse, I'd love to know, when you look, obviously you're very high on Western being a great university that you went to. Before going, how did you know that school was for you? How did you know that that was the choice that you needed to make at that point in your life?
Yeah, I mean, I think what you're asking, and I'm curious to get your thoughts on it too, is like, how do I gauge school as a young entrepreneur? Again, it's different in retrospect. It's different looking forward. I think now with the amount of education that's out there and the resources that are out there, I don't think school is as needed as maybe it used to be. But I do think that school is still important for a lot of people because it gives you a lot of fundamentals. It gives you connections. In terms of Western specifically, and I'll talk about Ivey a little bit, it's a well-known business school. And going back to kind of what you asked about Ontario, is Canada isn't the most well-known for its entrepreneurship. If anything, internally in the country right now, there's a big entrepreneurship crisis where there's not enough startups, there's not enough companies, there's a huge lack of funding, there isn't an innovative mindset as much as it could be relative to the US. So with that said, Ivey is one of the few schools that promotes entrepreneurship. They recently opened up the first entrepreneurial school in Canada. So that's what stood out to me about that school, is like they are one of the few schools in Canada that will back entrepreneurs and support entrepreneurs. And our first check in our current company, I might be getting a little bit ahead, was from Ivey itself. So the school gave us 10K. And so that's very rare. So that's what stood out to me about Ivey. And that's, again, why I'm super grateful for it. There's a free endorsement for Ivey.
So you intentionally went into school with, I want to be an entrepreneur, so I'm going to go here. Okay, for that reason.
Yeah. I knew that there was only one path for me. So that was the reason I chose Ivey's, because I knew they had that culture.
Right on. So now, while you're attending school in 2021, this is where that Matterverse comes in. And it's a company that focuses on bringing, from what I read, the true metaverse into reality. And I'd love to know, how did that come to be? What was your role within that company?
Yeah. So I wasn't one of the formal co-founders, but I was one of the founding members. I was like their first hire. I started when nothing was going on there, and there wasn't really a company. It was just a name and kind of a concept. What you described is accurate. I think at that point in time, there was a lot of stuff going on with the metaverse, and these are one of the few companies that were ahead of their time. Essentially, what they did was they worked with brands to help them create their own digital metaverses. So, for example, I know they did a deal with Louis Vuitton. So, one of the first ones we made was a Louis Vuitton metaverse. It was quite cool. I'd like walk in it and stuff. And so they were an interesting company. I helped lead sales and business development there, so growth, and that's kind of always been my expertise. So finding companies to partner with, selling them, sales cycles, that type of stuff. They were backed by YC. Yeah, at that time it was actually Y Combinator China. There used to be a thing called Y Combinator China, which was a part of YC, which would focus on Chinese companies. So they were backed by that. Very cool company, and I think one of my early experiences in entrepreneurship, I learned a lot from that experience.
What would have been the biggest learning experience that you think you could pull?
Yeah, I think it's something I still think about today. My co-founder at that time, his name was Sean, great guy. I'm still in touch with him. He taught me that in entrepreneurship, momentum is everything, right? Especially early stage startups. Companies live and die by momentum. As a founder at an early stage company, 0 to $1 million in revenue, you need to be a de facto cheerleader. You need to be pushing the momentum. You need to get people hyped, right? I tell people all the time, like one of my main jobs at the company is being a cheerleader, right? You need to keep people happy. You need to keep people hyped, because ultimately, if momentum dies early on in the company, you're not going to achieve that velocity. You need to kind of break out of that, 0 to 1 mil kind of bubble, let's call it. So that's one of my key learnings from that is you need that momentum, otherwise it falls apart.
And I think just working with Y Combinator had to have been a very unique experience. What did the partnership look like between your company at the time and YC? How did they influence your business?
Yeah. Again, like I'll speak to kind of how it related to me. I think it's different for the founders. Because at that time they were the main ones with the point of contact with Y Combinator China. But I think a lot of the learnings came down to the rest of the team that they were getting. And I think that it's a very, very interesting experience. I want to say all the myths you hear about it are very accurate. They're not really myths. It's like a high pressure kind of sales kind of crock pot where they're expecting you to really push forward and move very quick. And again, I think that's some of the key learnings I got from that, where they're really, really aggressive on how to approach, go to market, and how to move quick. I want to say those are my main learnings from that as well.
Right on. And so now we fast forward a little bit more in the story, and there's some other experiences you go into, Shubs. You get an opportunity with fintech and VC, and then even a little bit backwards before that working with the company, a little M&A experience. So obviously this all happens before you start Sharpstakes and you're going to work at a company. I'd love to know what advantage did seeing those other perspectives in this company give you that you have now brought in to Sharpstakes?
Yeah, I think that being a young founder, I'll kind of tie it back to that because I know that's a lot of your audience. It's so important to get a lot of experience, right? One of my favorite quotes is, you don't know what you don't know, right? Being 22, I don't know a lot of things, right? I'll be the first to say it. I know very little relative to someone who's, 25, 28, 30, 35, 40, someone who's ran a company before, someone who's sold a company before. So I think it's imperative that you're able to jam pack as many experiences as possible as quickly as possible, right? Being a founder, you're doing so many different things. It's impossible to get the appropriate experience for all those little things, right? Like I don't have time to be a head of marketing at a large company for 3 years before I start this company. So I think all those experiences help me kind of understand and learn new things, but also be around smart people, right? In all those experiences, I think the main thing was just that I was around smart people. My contribution in all those companies in retrospect, again, was not crazy. Like, I'm going to be honest. I'm a 19-year-old kid. I'm just trying to learn, right? But I put my best foot forward out there. I tried to provide as much value as possible. But I learned, right? I learned from my managing directors. I learned from the founders. I learned from the people who were a bit with me with the M&A company. I learned from the startups that my company was trying to buy, right? So from a very early stage, I surrounded myself with people that I would just sit in the back and kind of just like learn and notice the little details and just in terms of how to carry myself, how to move forward, because that I think is something that you have to build yourself experience wise. So I would say just learning from those smart people.
And you always had the intention of starting your own company. Like you were like, you know, that's the vision I'm casting ahead, but I know I need to go through this first before.
I think that when you're so young, one of the most important things you can do is just try things out. Like it's tough for me to say I knew a gazillion percent I was ready to start a business then.
Right. Okay. Fair. Right. Yeah.
Right after. I think it was always in the back of my head as I said, going to Ivy, that was one of the reasons I wanted to go. But I think that being in so many different situations and around so many different people, I was able to learn so many different things that kind of pushed me towards that, if that makes sense. So I think a lot of it was just me wanting to try stuff and then stumbling upon things.
Right on.
Yeah.
So you go to school and you have this opportunity with Matterverse, and now you have these other experiences that you're doing, and now we get into March of 2023, and this is where Sharpstakes comes into play. And so it's a platform that provides recommendations to Gen Z sports bettors. I think that's pretty accurate from what I've heard. I'd love to know how did this idea formulate? How did you and Jaden get going on this?
Yeah, 100%. I think it's a lot of things, right? Like going back to what I said about stumbling on the right opportunity. A lot of people don't know this, and I'm a bit hush hush about it, but I'm being more and more open about it. When I first started Sharpstakes, I wasn't the biggest sports bettor. Like I wasn't the biggest sports fan in all transparency, right? And so people always hear that and they're like, huh? Like how'd you start it then? Like how'd you get into this space? And I think it goes back to the fact that if you're doing a lot of things, you kind of stumble upon things that interest you and excite you. So while I was working in banking and finance, I saw this crazy infrastructure, and I met my co-founder there as well, Jaden. He worked in the same bank as me. And we see this crazy infrastructure around financial market. You know, you can share your investments, you can share your research. People are seeing what other people are investing into and all that stuff. There's a social side of investing, you know, there's memes around it, all that stuff. It's a community. And then we see sports betting getting legalized, and we're like, there's a lot of similarities around this, for better or for worse, right? They're not the same thing. One's definitely entertainment, one's not, but the overlap in terms of media and culture was becoming larger and larger. So that's kind of the connection that my co-founder and I saw, and then we kind of fell in love with it. And it started to really excite us, and so quickly our passion developed more and more. It kind of like lights a little bit in my eyes. But that's kind of how we stumbled upon it.
So I'm just trying to think. So you both see this, you're both kind of visualizing, hey, look at sports betting is becoming more popular, and you see this infrastructure in the financial industry. How much from like inception idea, how much time was there from inception of idea until like, let's get started? Like how many months, year?
Weeks.
Right away.
I'll tell you the story. So, people think that we launched in March of 2023. That's actually not true. We had the idea in March of 2023. So that wasn't even our first real sports season. The story as it goes was, so my co-founder and I, Jaden, we've always worked on projects together. Always, right? And we make a good team. I'm a wake up early matcha latte type of guy. He's a stay up late Red Bull
guy. And he's the developer, right? Like
tech side of things. He does everything. And so we were already hustling. We had already worked on a couple of projects together. We were doing some side hustles. We were doing some things. And literally we have this idea for Sharpstakes. I kid you not. It's like Saturday night we have this idea for Sharpstakes, okay? We're both in university at the time. We both have schools. I have an exam on Monday, actually. So we have this idea for Sharpstakes. We start plotting it out. We start getting wireframes, et cetera, et cetera. We start thinking of things. It's like Saturday night at this point, okay? We're like, how do we monetize it? How do we make money off this? Because we don't have funding, right? We're trying to launch something.
Bootstrap it, yeah.
Yeah, we need some money, right? And so it's Saturday night, and then so we go on Google. We learn about like sports betting and all that stuff. We come to the idea and the realization that like, okay, we need someone to advertise on our platform. Although we don't have like an audience yet, we think that someone would pay us to put their ads on our platform because we think we're going to get a lot of users, et cetera, right? I kid you not, on Sunday morning, Jaden and I found a conference in England And Jaden was like, this is a sports betting conference in England. We don't have a company yet, but there's going to be a bunch of sports betting advertisers there. If we put our money together, we have 2K. That's enough for a round trip. If you go to England tomorrow and come back with an advertiser, I'll build an entire MVP for a platform by the time you come back on Wednesday. And like, I kid you not, we have a video of it. I'm like, are you sure you want to do this? Are you sure you want to do this? It's like real time us filming it. And I'm like, he's like, yeah, let's do it. Let's do it. I trust you. I trust you. So he buys me a ticket. I go to England literally on 1 day's notice. I miss my exam. I fake an illness. I already graduated, so if they see this.
There you go. Yeah.
I miss my exam, my final. I fly to England. Jaden starts building a platform. In 3 days, I convinced all these people in England to give us advertising dollars to start our site up. And he builds a platform, an MVP. And then by Friday, we launched of that week. And we were able to monetize from day one. So that kind of shows you how quick we move. So we had the idea on Saturday. We had an MVP next Friday. And we're ready to go from that point on.
Having that much confidence at the beginning, do you think it's because you guys have taken stabs at other companies? You're like, let's just experiment, because like for first time founder, you have no idea what you're doing. And so like that, I mean, two grand to a college student, that's not like
life-changing
pennies.
Money. Yeah.
So you just think that the experience that you got, like all the stuff building up to it, maybe that was just an essential part of it that led into, all right, we got some confidence because we know a little bit about what we're doing.
Yeah. I think yes. I also think that naiveness is a superpower when you're early on, right? Like if anyone came to me now with the same decision-making process in your head, I'd be like, you really don't know what you're talking about. But there's something special about being naive. And so I think that also goes into, I think also Jaden and I have a great relationship. And again, like I can't speak more highly about him. He's someone who I have a lot of respect for. And so it's just having that trust in each other, right? Like I didn't even believe in myself. I told him like, no, we only have 2,000. Like, trust me, I don't think we should go. He's like, no, I trust you. You need to trust yourself. You go, you know? And so I do think it's some of the chemistry we had built from past projects. And I do think it's some of that weakness as well.
That's crazy. And I think another important topic when somebody is starting a company is talking about like partnerships. For my company, Shubs, I don't have a partner, but I know a lot maybe have two, or in a lot of cases, those YC companies, like they say at least 3 founders, like that's usually a pretty big rule of theirs.
Yeah.
What should somebody be thinking about when choosing their partner? Because that's a really important, like you guys have good chemistry, but I mean, partnerships could go south quickly. So how do you think about that? How should somebody choose a strategic partner?
I think that a good partner is so key to a successful business. The most important thing, cliche answer, is just trust, right? From day one that Jaden and I started working together, we opened a bank account together and we pooled every last dollar we had into one bank account. Like there was ultimate trust from day one. And I think that, I don't know if I have any crazy practical tips on how to find that. Again, I want to say I just stumbled upon it. I got a bit lucky. But there needs to be trust, tremendous trust. And there needs to be an alignment on what you want. But I think a good partner makes all the difference, right? I always say for Sharpstakes, I don't know if my investors are going to like this, the most valuable asset I feel like we have in their company is the relationship Jaden and I have, right? Especially at this stage, because ultimately, if Jaden and I have the right mindset and our relationship is strong, then the company will find a way. Like we'll do whatever it takes. You know what I mean?
Get it done.
Yeah. So that's what I would say about that. But I think it's crucial. I don't know. Like, have you ever thought about finding a partner?
Considered for sure. Yeah. And I think in some cases, like the risk then comes all the way back to me. Like no matter, like it's where you guys split, where it's like, okay, if something happened, like there's another, like you guys can pick up the slack.
Yeah.
I think in some cases a partner is probably helpful because then like you guys are like right there, like you guys are both like, all right, we're working those 18-hour days during Super Bowl time. Like this sucks, but like there's another side and like you guys are both there in it together, in the battle together.
I totally resonate with what you're saying. I think that's probably one of the biggest benefits, right? It's just like, okay, work aside, benefit aside, also the shared experience, having someone there with you in trenches with. I think it's like special. It's like poetic.
Right on. Yeah, like spiritual connection. That's cool. On another side, so I'm just curious, do you think if Jaden were a sales focus, if that was his strength, do you think it would work as effective, or is it because you guys are so opposites, so different?
Yeah, I think opposites do attract well in the sense where like we have very complementary skills. And so I would say that's more optimal in my personal opinion. But again, I don't think another variation of that can't work, right? It's just about, being mindful. I think one thing I want to say on it, the last thing is like it's not easy. You know what I mean? Like working with anyone is not easy. Like a lot of hours are put in every single week on ensuring Jaden and I have a good relationship, right? Like very intentional work. We put time aside from our daily life to go out and do fun things together. We put time every single day to connect with each other multiple times a day. We do a big Monday morning meeting, and then a big Friday evening meeting just to kind of recap the week, right? So like it's not easy. Like I think the one thing people think about having a partner is like, oh, some people just get lucky and you kind of stumble upon it. No, like it's probably one of the hardest things in our business. And I think Jaden would agree on it, is like making sure that we have a good relationship is something we like constantly hustle on like every single day. So I will say that.
And so kind of transitioning into getting those first customers, because like now you've got your founding team, you two, and now you've got your first advertising dollars. You got people that are going to commit to the platform to start. And of course you need users. So how do you acquire your first users of the platform?
I mean, going back to being at Ivey and being at school, I recall vividly. So we had built the platform. It's Friday. You guys are getting like the day by day kind of launch history of Sharpstakes. It was Friday. I come and we launched on that Friday. So Saturday night we have the idea. Sunday, Jaden books me a trip to England. Monday, I'm in England. I come back Wednesday. Platform's ready by Friday. And so I recall vividly our launch strategy for our first, let's call it like 50 users, was we literally told everyone, because we're students at school, right? And everyone's trying to bet, everyone's trying to get into it. We literally told everybody that, hey, if you come to this one classroom after school ends on Friday, everyone who comes gets $20 to show up. Just to show up. You don't have to do anything. You just get $20. You just have to show up, literally nothing else. And we're going to talk to you about the company we're building, right? So I think it cost us like $500. I think like 20, 30 people showed up, whatever the number, $600, whatever it is, right? And so there's like a room full of these people, and they're just there for their money. I literally remember it so vividly. Like some people came who weren't interested in sports or betting or didn't even know us at all, and they're like, like how do I get my 20? And we're like we had to like kind of give it to people because we promised. But we had the PowerPoint ready, and we literally just spoke from the heart, right? I think that's so important. Just like speaking from the heart and like no bullshit, just like the truth. And we literally just told everyone like, hey, this is us. We really want to build something. We built this cool product. We just want you guys to try it. Like, please just try, experiment with it. Give us your feedback. And I think that day we got like 20, 30 signups. Some of them told their roommates as well. I think we ended the day with like 50 signups on their first day or something like that. And we just started off with that. Those people started using the platform, started giving us some feedback. And I think by week 2, we just launched like a test subscription on the site. It was like $50 a month or something like that. And within week 2, we kind of made back the initial 600 back because people subscribed. So it was just like that initial hustle, initial kind of push to get over.
And at the very beginning, because I think it's crucial, is like the feedback from your customers. Like you're building it for them. Like what do they want? How are you structuring those conversations? Like, what are you looking for to iterate?
Yeah, I think that at the earliest stage possible, even before you start a company or build anything, you need to be talking to as many people as possible. I think it's one of the most practical pieces of advice that people get and is still not taken. But if I can't stress something enough, it's talk to as many users as possible and just get feedback. And everyone's opinion is valid, right? Like, hey, what do you like about it? Hey, what do you dislike? Hey, what's going to get you to use this every day? That type of stuff.
Right on. So you go from 30 people in a room to a 7-figure business. So it drastically takes off there in Ontario. And you gave me a great quote in our initial call. I'm going to read what you said because I wrote it down word for word. Sure. And you said, the first year or so for most companies before trying to find product market fit, you feel like a piece of the company is missing. You don't really know exactly what works yet. I'd love to know, how did you get from those first... You said that. Yep. Those were your words. Quote. Right on. 30 people in a room to finding closer. I know there's still a lot that you're working on in the next couple of years here, but closer to that product market fit.
Yeah, I think product market fit is like almost an inside joke my co-founder and I have at this point, right? Like if I had to write a book about our lives right now, like our entrepreneurial lives right now, the title would probably be like The Pursuit of Product Market Fit.
Beautiful. Yeah. Oh, that's a great title. Yeah.
The person, like literally, like every single day, like I start off my day thinking about like how am I going to get product market fit? How am I going to get product market fit? It's like so demystified, or it's so mystified. Sorry, where like no one really knows what it is. There's no tangible metrics. People say different things. The most important thing for us specifically around product market fit and how we think about it is just doing little experiments, right? At the end of the day, I think a company is just a bunch of little hypotheses put together, and you're doing everything you can to validate those hypotheses. So on a day-to-day basis, we're doing things that we believe could push us closer to product market fit. And it's so subjective, right? Like we set our own definition, like what is product market fit? We often joke about the fact that like you just know when you have product market fit. You just wake up one day and you feel it, right? So I think as an entrepreneur, one of the things you need to do is like, what experiments am I going to run today? How do I believe that's going to benefit the company? And how do I validate those experiments? And once they are validated, what can I take away from that experiment to push me closer, right? Ultimately, it's a function of user growth, user retention, and revenue. But what miniature experiments am I doing that might move one of these levers? So that's kind of how I would say we look at it on a high level.
Have you read the book Lean Startup by Eric Rice? So similar, like iterate. So like build, break, iterate, and it's like that cycle that continues.
Build, break, iterate. Again, I think there's so many different ways people look at it, right? Like there's that one test, which is like if you interview a large enough quantity of your user base, if 40% of them said that they would be very upset if your product doesn't exist, you have product market fit, right? So like that's one very popular YC one that I've heard as of recently. But I don't know. For us, I think one day I'm gonna wake up and I'm gonna be like, today.
And then the book comes out. Then the book will be released. So that's coming, folks. So like give it a couple of years and that will be out here soon. That'll be published.
I hope.
So Shubs, when you think about like present day and you've had a lot of different experiences, I mean, you're still, 22, but a lot of business experiences up to this point. What is like that one burning question on your mind that you're always thinking about, you're wrestling with? Maybe you can't sleep sometimes, you're thinking about it, and you've just been trying to come to a solution. You just haven't quite found an answer to it yet.
It's like almost philosophical. I think on the business level, I don't like to believe that there is an answer for that. And that's from a recent kind of thought process change where we've had internally, which is that anytime there's a big business problem, if you are specific about it and you're tangible about it and you're objective about it, you'll always be able to answer it. So I don't think that exists for in our business, but I will answer your question in the sense that I think more philosophically as like a young entrepreneur, I think sometimes something I always ask myself is, how do I balance what I'm trying to build with your own happiness as a founder? I think that's something a lot of young people think about, right? I'm sure you think about that as well, right? Where you're putting in days, you're putting in hours, you're making sacrifices in your personal life. I just graduated. I just canceled a grad trip to Japan, right? Something I've planned for years for the business, right? And sometimes that's something I reflect on is, will I look back in 20 years, 30 years and be happy about it? I think my answer is yes, because I love the game more than anything. Japan's cool, but Sharpstakes is slightly cooler in my opinion. I hope that doesn't upset any Japanese people. You guys are great.
That's not what I was expecting.
But you know what I mean, right? Like I love what I do. I love it so much. Like I wake up every day so excited. But sometimes I do think is when I'm 50, will I regret it? But I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what happens.
And that's why these podcasts will be great to go in the archives, because we'll fast forward 20 years and you'll watch this again and be like, holy crap, look at where I was at. Yeah. When you think of the entrepreneurial roller coaster, Shubs, and you think about the times where you're up, you're crushing it, things are going super well. And the other side, when things are not going well, what are you doing in the times when you're doing well to keep pushing on that? And then what are you doing when you go to those low moments to try and get yourself out of that rut? Such
a good question. I always say that at Sharpstakes, momentum shifts is it's like a stock ticker. 1 hour we're feeling good, 1 hour we're feeling bad, 1 hour we're feeling good. I think it's so important to stay level-headed and reduce the importance. That's what my best advice would be, right? We could have literally our best sales day ever, make 10K, 20K in a day. I promise you, at the end of the day, I'm going to be like, okay, that was nice. Cool. We could have our worst day ever. We lose 10 partners. Someone leaves the company. We're getting sued. I promise you at the end of the day, I'm going to be like, okay, that was nice. You know what I mean? And so I think the best piece of advice there is lower the importance and try not to make it as much of a peak and valley type of mindset and more of a slow growth kind of mindset. I think that is what's going to keep you sane as an entrepreneur. So that's kind of that's how I look at it.
There's any advice that you'd give to your younger self before starting this company?
I'm still my younger self.
Your younger self, you're 3 years ago when you were first starting this company, when you were just getting going.
I think it would just be to talk to more people and talk to more users.
More feedback. Yeah.
Okay. Get more feedback. Like I mentioned, that's like the one piece of advice that everyone gives, but no one follows enough. Is just talk to more users. You can never talk to enough users. So Shubs, how we finish every episode here on Built from Scratch is with the quote that means the most to you. And the quote that you gave me is from Larry Ellison, the Oracle legend. And it says, I have had all of the disadvantages required for success. Now I want you to tell me what this means to you and how the next generation can take this quote as a means to change the world we live in today. It's very easy to play victim, and it's very easy to see the hardships you have in your own life. It's very easy to see the lack of funding you have. It's very easy to see the lack of experience you have as a young entrepreneur. It's very easy to see that, the VCs have less trust in you because you're 19 and your voice still cracks. And I think that what this quote means for me is that, yeah, sure, you have those disadvantages, but how do you turn them into advantages, right? The lack of funding that we had made us tough and allowed us to bootstrap, right? The lack of experiences that we had gave us the naiveness we needed to jump into challenges without thinking too much about them, right? The voice cracks is another story. I'm not too proud of those, but the young kind of demeanor we had made VCs excited to meet us because they kind of want to see what are these young kids building, right? And so you can either choose to be negative, you can choose to be neutral, or you can choose to be positive. And I think that's what gets me excited about this quote, right? Everything you have, every factor can be an advantage or a disadvantage. And I think that if you want to be successful as a young entrepreneur, it's up to you to look at the positive side and think about how to leverage those things. So this is something that really inspires me. Shout out Larry. And hopefully we can keep leveraging our disadvantages for the best. So I'll leave it at that.
Everybody, that is Shubs with Sharpstakes. Shubs, where can the audience get in touch with you, find your platform, start betting on Sharpstakes? Check us out. Download our app. It's completely free in Canada and the US. Check us out on TikTok. Check us out on Instagram. You'll find us. Just search up Sharpstakes. Let us know how you like the platform. Let us know if you find any bugs. Excited for you guys to use the platform, and let us know how you find it. Shubs, appreciate the time today.
All right, appreciate it.